Hey Rebels, I want to take a quick moment to share something super exciting with you. If you've been feeling stuck, disconnected, or just know there is more to life than what you're experiencing, I have something special for you. I have created a powerful 6-step video series called Unleash Your Potential, an introduction to the Angelova Method. As a valued mind-body podcast listener, the series is my gift to you. In this series, I will guide you through the core elements of the Angelova Method, a unique approach that integrates movement, mindset, and mastery to help you align your body, mind, and life. You will learn practical techniques to improve your alignment, boost your core strength, and connect deeply to your inner self. Whether you're looking to enhance your physical health, gain mental clarity, or simply live more fully, these videos are designed to get you started on the path to your most vibrant self. And the best part? It's completely free. So if you're ready to break through barriers and unleash your full potential, head over to mindbodyexpert.com and get started today. Let's take this journey together, because you, my rebel, deserve nothing less than the extraordinary. Hi, Rebels, and welcome to the Mind Body Podcast, your rebellious podcast with me, your host, Maria, where it is all about a strong body, calm mind, healing, and fully living. And today, your treat is somebody very special, and that is Dr. Chris Bruno, who is a GI doctor and a long-time client. And she's going to tell us all about her experience with the Angelova Method, because you know what it made me think as she was sharing some stuff, I was like, oh, people should hear that from somebody who is experiencing the work versus from me. So Chris, welcome on board. It is such a pleasure to have you here.
Well, it's been a pleasure being a client for many years now.
Has it really been?
Yeah. Of the torture method. But no, I originally really started because I had cardio. I do 10,000 steps a day. I may mix it in with walking, aggressive hiking, gardening. I am not a runner. Sometimes I go on a treadmill. Sometimes I would swim. But I realized as I approached my late 50s and 60s, again, we're talking many years, that I wasn't as flexible as I wanted to be, and I was losing flexibility. So I joined a Pilates class with Maria just simply to improve my flexibility. I thought that would be a good thing to try.
Yeah.
I was in a class, and then life being what it is, during COVID, I was a gardening warrior. I was pushing up big, I'm strong, right? I'm really strong, my legs and my arms. I was pushing a wheelbarrow full of rocks up a muddy hill, and I felt something pull. And then at that point, I tried to do a Pilates class like the next day. I figured I pulled something, ice, heat, whatever, rest, non-steroidals, and I couldn't do it. And I said to Maria, I can't do it. I don't know what's wrong.
Yeah, I remember that actually.
Yeah, I just couldn't do it. We were doing COVID video
online classes. Yeah.
Classes. So that was also a different kind of layer in the sense that video, you just don't get to see as much of the fine movement and be adjusted by Maria, in that regards. So it was even more removed and sort of like just doing classes. And now that I look back on that, I was like, oh my God, no, it's not what I needed. So I was injured, and it took about 3 to 6 months, because I'm a physician and I don't like being a patient, and I'm in denial. And I did instead also, I switched to do, because it was hurting, I figured I still need to maintain my strength, maybe some of my flexibility. So that's when I signed up for one-on-one Pilates classes, and then began to experience the Maria Method.
Yeah. And especially, I think, Chris, one other factor was that you were injured. So we had to do a lot of modifications to get your body to move properly, because, I vividly remember seeing you coming here, and you were literally twisted and folded. And I thought to myself, oh, that's going to be a big one.
Right.
And we had to go back to the very basics of movement to kind of like get you out of that pretzel position that you were in.
Yep. We worked on little things, my feet, because I tended to scrunch up my toes and walk and roll to the outside of my feet. And that wasn't good it ended up turning out being a quadriceps tendon tear when we finally figured it out. So for 6 months, we really just tried to maintain strength, flexibility in my legs, my posture, not injure anything more. When I figured it out and got an appointment during COVID that actually met with a physician, because the first appointment I had was via video. And they told me to take non-steroidals and ice it. And I probably had some arthritis in my hip.
Yeah.
So finally, being frustrated now, we're trying to at least maintain me moving around, not losing even my endurance. I was still working and doing, quite a few steps a day in the hospital, battling the pain, or at least keeping myself in position. Once we figured it out and got an MRI, we knew it was a quadriceps tendon tear. And therefore, we focused on that was going to take about a year to heal, which included rest. But if you just sit there, everything else atrophies.
And that's what we didn't want to happen. So we kept you mobile the way we wanted to, very, very gentle with what was going on.
It was gentle, but the thing is, it was focused. It was integrated. And in a way, we worked on certain muscle groups, muscles and stuff that I didn't know I had. And also, you begin to realize the different forms of pain that you can experience. There's bone pain, there's muscle pain, there's tired muscle pain, there's I pulled a tendon pain, there's the discomfort that you feel, which is actually a good pain. You feel so good when you hit the right muscle group and all, and you stretch it out. So it's a combination of strengthening, stretching, as well as finding those fine muscle groups that you hadn't been using. And probably that's what led to the injury, because you were dependent on these compensatory muscle groups and tendon groups. So in a way, the progress of the Maria method, where we're beginning to focus on different muscle groups, different stretches for different parts of your skeleton. She always starts every session with, so how are you feeling? Well, that's a very pointed question from Maria. It's a dangerous question, because in a way you say, well, my back is feeling a little achy. And then you have to figure out why your back is feeling a little achy, because probably you weren't bending at the waist properly or holding your core and using your abdominal muscles, so your back's overworking. So you begin to develop this integrated knowledge base of your own body that she helps you with. Like what group of muscles do you need to strengthen? What are you overworking? And then never mind that, you have to add on alignment of it all between your feet and your knee and your hip. And you begin to, even though the pain was getting better and the tendon was healing, I began to realize, with the different sessions, one, that I needed to work on the muscles that I had never really used before. And where were they? And why were they, maybe they were tired kind of pain because I worked them out more. And yet maybe I did the wrong movement, so I have a different kind of ache. So all of those things you sort of begin to focus on, which begins to drive you crazy, because you can't automatically do anything anymore. You can't even automatically walk. And then when you come in, she finds a different torture thing, a different torture instrument that you can use at home, and it will really help you, which they do, between your feet and these balls that have prongs on them, and you stand on it, and the different parts of your foot to spread out, between that and splaying out your feet, or rolling on what do you call that?
Foam roller, the foam roller.
that releases the muscles in your back and your thighs and all, and laying on it. And even like when you're just laying down, you begin to think, okay, how can I like be in the right position? How can I stretch a little bit in my hips and all? But
I just want to jump in. I just
want
to jump in, Chris, because something very important that you're bringing up that I think is missing as part of traditional fitness is that self-awareness of what you're doing and how you're moving. It's not just go through the motion, but it's very intentional. And there's a reason for why the way you're moving, right?
Right. And then once you get to this point, then the next thing happens. It's called, it freaks out your mind, because every movement or what you're thinking and how you're doing it. And then you get on yourself because, oh, I'm not getting better, or I can't do this. And that's when you actually have to begin to address your mindset. It's like layers, because your mind, you know, even when you do an exercise and you stretch out your what do you call it? Your balance point, your proprioception of where you
your
are,
center,
standing straight. It's changed. So after you've stretched out, all of a sudden you feel like this wibbly wobbly thing before you walk, because your whole center of gravity has changed. So that, you know, that in it's just itself is one little example of how your mind then has to kick in.
Your brain has to
your brain, your brain has to kick in. But then when you're doing all this, you can, when you're having an injury that takes a year to heal, you begin to play with your just emotional status. Because with chronic pain, you begin to get a little tired and cranky. And, you know, like, oh, why am I doing it? But then you realize it's unlike cardio and everything like that, because you realize you have to do it. You want to do it because you're just going to feel better. And you're going to begin to know, you're beginning to know when Maria trains you and you makes you have to listen to get out of those silos of stretching, cardio, eating healthy kind of thing. But we all think of it easily in each silo, whereas one day we may do it well, one day we may not. You have to get out of that and sort of integrate it all. And then you begin to feel like you begin to be able to feel what's happening in your body, which then you now have to like learn how to cope with. and you know, it's like, oh,
you have to learn how to cope with.
First is
like a big punishment.
First is coping. First is denial. Then you begin to cope. And then you begin to accept that this is a better way of life.
And then what happened, Chris?
Well, then I got diagnosed with bone-on-bone arthritis, different pain. Then they gave me options like injection versus surgery. And then we talked, you know, like if I have this, do we have any other alternatives? You know, so I opted for surgery, which is a while before you can get an appointment to have the surgery. And what we decided to do, which was very helpful, is we continued with our plan, but I actually hired my own physical therapist to come to my house, sort of like in training for my surgery.
Yeah, to prepare your body for surgery, because I think that's a big missing point from a lot of people going into surgery is how they go into the surgery. So doing the specific work to prepare the body for the surgery instead of figuring it out after the surgery. So you at that point were preparing with a physical therapist and me and a chiropractor. You went into surgery. And now you're how many weeks post-surgery? About a month? Has it been a month?
About a month. About a month. I'm walking around. I feel absolutely no pain from the surgery. But what's fascinating is, you know, one, I'm glad I did the work beforehand, because normally I hold my body in the wrong position on the right-hand side. And that starts with the feet, the knee, the hip, up into the back. But what we did is we made sure at least I could maintain and get into a normal position. I wasn't so, you know, so contracted or tight. So tight. I was in a permanent bad position. We know before I went into surgery, like we worked on making sure I could take my leg, my foot and all, and put it into a normal position. Yeah. You know? And I couldn't maintain it, but I could get there, and I hadn't lost that part. And we also worked with the compensatory muscles.
And what
and
are
the mind.
And the mind, yes, big time mindset. Because yes, when you're in pain, like you said, especially chronic pain, it's the mind starts quick, pulling you back big time.
Yeah. And, to your point, Maria, you also said something about, maintaining a regular pattern. So you even set up for me, I did is, even if I was sitting for a while, I'd make sure I got up, stretched, and did 250 steps to 500 steps and sat down every hour to keep the motion going. Because when you don't move, that was the other part of the mindset. I didn't really want to move, but movement became so important that we worked on at least even a structure that I could do that I didn't have to think about, but kept me moving,
Yeah. And I think that was a big one after your surgery, right? You were like, I am so exhausted. So we said, okay, reduce it. Don't, reduce it, go rest. And I do have to say, Chris, that's another huge win, I would say, on your part is you're a go, 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 get it type of person. And I mean, you have gone such a far way from learning to respect your body's boundaries and to give yourself permission to take a break. And to give yourself permission to cancel a meeting if you're not feeling well. And, to adjust your lifestyle and listen to yourself, to where you are.
Right. And during the pre-surgery pain, I would go to bed early. I would lay down. If I was traveling, I'd lay down on the bed. I'd do some stretches. And you know what? I went to bed early. And I slept 8, 9, 10 hours if I wasn't called in. But that was important to feel okay to do, which, you gave me sort of permission and had to keep reminding me in this process, even post-surgery. I came home the day of surgery, woohoo! I can move around, no pain. And then the swelling and all hit. And I guess in some ways, that's the other part of what we learned is with the swelling, the edema and bruising, all the things one can do that improve your post-surgical course,
experience. Yeah, 100%. And I mean, rest has been huge again for you post surgery. All of the things to, again, help with the swelling and the bruising. And again, doing that work to get you back into balance, right? Because you had some other issues that popped up after surgery. You had the tightness in the feet and the calves were cramping and so forth, to rebalance all of that with the torture devices that I suggest. Right?
Yeah, because who would have thought? The hip didn't hurt me. It was the cramping, the post-surgical things because of the other muscle groups, which we had been paying attention to. Can you imagine? But the other point being is through you, I knew that it was because of I need compensation, that the things I was going through in surgery that we talked about. And, I knew, I don't know what people do they told me no physical therapy, no limitations post-surgery. And I'm like, what?
Welcome to the Mind Body Podcast. I'm your host, Maria Angelova, and I'm here to challenge everything you have been told about aging and wellness. This podcast is for those who refuse to accept that growing old means growing unhealthy. Each week, I will bring you dynamic conversations with inspirational guests, sharing practical advice, insights, and motivation to live your life rebelliously as you age with grace and vitality. This is your time to embrace self-care, transformation, and an infectious spirit that says no to the conventional and yes to a vibrant, powerful life. Let's dive in and redefine what it means to live well. Well, and we have talked about that, Chris, right? I mean, even your experience, you were like, I don't know how people do this without any kind of restorative work after this, because there is fascia is impacted, muscles are impacted, your whole body is impacted. Your body has gone through trauma that it has to recover from.
Right. And plus, old bad life patterns of motion rear their heads. You default, as we talked about, you default to the old pattern. Like my body, even though it didn't need to do it, defaulted to a twist and a dip. And I would sink into the hip still. And still is driving me crazy, but yeah. But then you're getting torture methods to undo it. And then you yell at me. But
with love,
I may not know I'm doing it. That's the other point. You know, you need somebody that sees what you're doing and tells you, you're doing this. Did you not realize you're doing the wrong thing? You know?
And you know that you brought it up earlier, Chris, is maybe you can comment on this. I constantly ask you, what do you feel? Walk around. What do you feel? Walk around. Like what? I mean, maybe before and after, like how you appreciate it now versus, you know, a lot of clients are annoyed with me by that. Like, why do I need to tell you that I'm fine? And I'm like, no, because I'm retraining your brain of what it feels before and after. What is your commentary about that as somebody who has experienced that continuously for years?
Well, it's something that you never get anywhere else that is absolutely necessary, and you can't do it yourself because you do not notice it. And I have to now think about it. I have a better, I would say, vocabulary in the sense that I can tell you that this muscle aches probably because of this, or this I'm feeling pain here, you know. And, I'm even grateful that, when I was going through this, I had learned enough to know that the pain of the quadriceps tendon tear was not the same as what was beginning to happen with the bone on bone.
You had the awareness, and that's so important.
And you picked it up too, though, because you're saying this doesn't make sense because, remember?
Yeah. It was, I remember very well. It was after a trip you took, and I was like, this just makes no sense. Something changed. I remember that conversation very well.
Right, because I could get and do the things I needed to do with the quadriceps tendon and have no pain. But then I'd get up and walk or something like that, and I just had the pain, you know?
Yeah. It's amazing to see from me, to see how much your body awareness has grown. When I tell you do this or do that, you might not be doing it, but you know exactly what I'm talking about, and you correct. Like what we did today, right? We were walking with something on your head so that your posture is nice and proper, right? But you're able to do these corrections versus in the beginning, it's like, I don't know if you remember some of your basic sessions where we did footwork for like the entire hour.
Yeah.
And it was just like minor corrections all the time.
And it's also developing because different things work at different times, but also sometimes you just have to have it from different perspectives, like the cardboard on your head versus, the what do you call it? The, some other instrument of torture you have down there in the basement, something else that points it out and highlights it in a different way, but it's a process of learning all that. And you need somebody to sort of help point that out. You can't just go to a class and do, because it just doesn't help. And like, it's not the Pilates silo. It's not the chiropractor silo. It's not the physical therapy silo. It's not the mind-body silo. It's the sort of integration of the whole, but you need to learn. We're never taught, how do we integrate this? How do we have it flow in our daily existence? And I guess, we talk about Pilates as flowing, but essentially the Maria method is a flowing of the mind and body. But you have to realize what you're doing in order to make it flow. Yes. It's not automatic. It does not come automatic. In fact, automatic means you're defaulting to comfort.
To what you know. In body and mind. And if you want change, something has to change. How would you say, if you had to pick one word of how this experience has been, you call it the Maria method. I kind of like that. It's easier rather than the Angelova method, but then traditional fitness, like what would be, can you pick like one word on one statement that you say how it is different because I get a lot of times people ask me like, are you a personal trainer? And I'm like, kind of, sort of, not really. How would you answer that question? Is Maria a personal trainer? What would you say?
I wouldn't say personal trainer, because to me, that's just, you go in and you're told where to stretch out or whatever you want to work on that day kind of thing. And I would call it that you're my self-integrator. You're teaching me how to self-integrate. My mind, my body, my muscles, my bony structure. You're my self-integrator.
I like that, the self-integrator.
Yeah. You know, because you can't see it yourself because you're always defaulting to automatic. And it takes training to take the defaulted automatic into more of an awareness where you're not totally on automatic. You're on self-integration. You know to stop and reassess through the day, or whether it means with stress and what's happening, or where your position of your body is, or that you need more, more air, more cardiac. But it's a sort of integration in your whole life of your daily movement that leads to health. It's not, going to cardio for a half hour. That's not going to help you. It's not going to Pilates class for an hour. It's every moment of your day, how to integrate your mind, your body movement, your health, so that it flows. And you need to learn that, and you need to practice that, because it ain't going to be automatic. You're my person. You are my flow, mind, body, flow integrator, but you're my personal flow adjuster. Make me aware. You're my awareness instructor. How about that?
And I also love your choice of word integrator, because even with the movement, right, we work on the feet, we work on the pelvis, we work on the spine, we work on the shoulders, we work on the neck, right? And then it's like, oh, I got it. And that's okay, now we're going to put this and this together. It's like, oh, now I'm thinking about this, I forgot about that. Until the whole body starts moving in unison.
Right.
And synchrony. And then the amazing feeling of like the mind clicking in with that.
Yeah.
And changing your life to one from push to one of flow.
Right. And it's an amazing feeling. And you begin to get little tastes of it. And but then some days you really don't. You have to learn then to forgive yourself, because some days you do it and you can't integrate it. And like you saw me today, I almost fell over just trying to do one thing with my feet and lift up my foot and walk. I almost fell over walking. Come on. Walking on a surface.
Okay, let's not be so harsh on ourselves. You were doing something that was challenging your balance. It wasn't just walking.
Yes, but other people would think that was simple, and it's not. If you do it right.
So do a quick commentary on that, Chris. Sometimes, yes, and we joke about that people who have not experienced the work, they really have no idea how much work goes into it and how much you have to focus on what you're doing. Because if somebody looks from the side, they'll be like, she's not even moving. What is she doing?
Yeah. Well, if you learn that fast, after 2 repetitions, you're like, can we quit? And you often have seen me sometimes glancing at the clock. But when you actually begin to flow and get it, it's like all of a sudden it's with practice and repetition and correction and integration. All of a sudden you get it and you realize it's like your body's free and it's moving, and it's so wonderful to feel that, and you don't even, it takes practice, right?
It takes time and practice.
Yep. It's like everything is lighter, everything's easier, everything, even today, a couple of things happened, and I'm like, okay, how is that going to happen? How are we going to lift that up there regarding people coming and other things happening all at once? And I just took a deep breath and said, it'll work out whenever they show up. And guess what? Another person showed up, helped lift this thing that I didn't have to do. It all worked out perfectly. And so I guess that's the other thing is, like, once you realize their flow, you figure like life is going to ebb and flow. And you know what? Trying to work something out and add the stress to this moment ain't going to change whatever happens, and I'll deal with it at the moment. So it's also beginning to learn what you're doing in your body is you're waiting for things to catch up and flow. that also teaches you the technique, again, integration, of that in some ways you're practicing that flow and waiting for the right movement and the right events to happen and come together. And at that moment, it will come together how it's supposed to. And that moment is when you decide where you place your body, where you place your stress, where you place whatever. You wait for the moment. So when your body's beginning to flow, your mind is going to be able to flow regarding your life, because it's throughout the day how you do it and approach it.
Yeah. It's how you approach each and every moment that you spend.
Every moment of every day. And it sounds very, in some ways, not doable, but in some ways it is once you begin to do it and realize, like your body, all of a sudden, everything feels so much better and it flows. And when you've done that practice and doing it, you realize it's so, sometimes I turn to you, don't I? And I go, when I do it right, I go, is that easy? Because I'm used to relying on one muscle to do something. I turn to you and go, is that easy, Maria?
Yeah. And you say, I know exactly what you say. Oh my gosh, that was easy. I don't even feel like I'm working.
Yeah, until you make me do it 5 times.
Yes,
that's I get the number really in gang. But it is, if you do it right, it begins to be easier. And you're like, why didn't I do this before? And the same thing then happens with everything else in your life.
Yeah.
Why didn't I just do this before? Because it's easier,
I love it. Well, Chris, I can't let you off the hook without you telling us what's your definition of rebellious.
The first word comes to me, torture, but good torture and learning. It's like learning, it's learning how to put it all together, which is like, I guess if you were going to be a professional in any sport, but it's life that makes it just so much easier. So it is torture, but it's good torture because you're having to do the things that you never really wanted to do in life and not face. And by having your body do that, your mind begins to do that and not fear. No fear.
Oh, I love that. I love how you tied the two together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's what happens. All of a sudden, they both click together, You can't separate the two. So when you learn something on the one, you begin to realize that your mind goes, oh, if it happens with my body, it can happen with my mind. I just need to practice it and it's helpful to have your coach, your integrated coach, help you with that practice and give you those exercises and point out where you could do things better and how you throw the football, little things, back to basics, but they add up and they're really good.
Well, and I think, and we can wrap up on that. I think it's the basics, right? The Angelova Method is the foundation. And what I always say, you learn the foundation, then go do whatever you want. But until you have a solid foundation, we get in trouble with body and mind. And once you have the foundations, you can see life in a completely different way, right?
Yes. And what it also does is it reminds you that if you go out and do whatever and you forget about the foundation and you just become automatic again, part of it also is the feedback that you've got to focus on your foundation. You've got to focus on the practicing and keeping the foundation. That just going to automatic, it'll be slippage, and that's, it's sort of the same in sports. You don't exercise and you don't stay in shape, but it's a foundation has a bigger breadth than just cardio or playing a sport or playing tennis. It's a life breath of the day, so it's not a sport. What it is how to process the day with great foundational skills that help you flow and integrate and can to a certain extent be on automatic. But if you go automatic and forget about it, you're going to default to your old habits that all of us have because that's the only thing we knew.
Yeah.
So I guess in some ways, the younger, the better.
Yeah. Yeah, the younger
I'm the
the better.
oldster. I'm still struggling.
No, and you know what? Let's give you a big kudos and pat on the back, Chris, because you have gone through a lot. And yes, you associate me with torture for a reason, but it has been good type of torture, you know.
Yes.
And I mean, we joke, and I ask you during class when you're giving me the dirty look, do you still love me? Sometimes I get, not today.
Exactly.
But
Think
you have
about all the pain and how warped my body would be and immobile at a young age if I didn't do this. That is scary to me. That's really scary to me because I see it in other people my age.
Yeah.
You know?
And you know, I think that's a great point that you make, that don't give up. Like, know that there are ways to nurture and support and heal your body and mind. They go hand in hand, as Chris said. And it's uncomfortable. The journey of growth is not a journey of comfort. However, there is a way to such better experience of life when you walk that journey.
Much more rewarding.
Much more rewarding. Well, with that,
ultimately less pain than what I would have gone through.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So with that, Chris, I send you a big thank you for being here with us and sharing all about your journey. And Rebels, if you have any questions, like I said, ask them to somebody who has experienced the work. Of course, I'm happy to answer any questions as well. But if you have any specific questions or are curious about anything that Chris talked about, let us know and we'll make sure to address those. Yeah. Chris, Thank you so much. You guys share this info with anybody who might find it helpful. And as always, do not forget to stay rebellious. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us on the Mind Body Podcast, where we explore the power of living authentically and rebelliously. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a fellow rebellious soul who would love to hear what we share as much as you do. Stay strong, stay calm, and most importantly, stay rebellious. Until next time, rebellious souls, keep living fully. Your journey is just beginning.